Ready? Good evening, everyone. We'll be reconvening the regular meeting, and then note for the record of attendance that council member or Mayor Pro Tem Galarza will not be in attendance with us. And then I think Mayor Hernandez will be in and out of Zoom throughout the rest of the evening. If we can all stand, and then we're going to come back to the meeting, and then City of Coachella regular meeting and the affiliated boards and commissions, and I'll skip over all the details about meeting or the real time and in writing, and then jump to the Pledge of Allegiance. And then if I can have the city attorney lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any closed session announcements?
Thank you. City Council been in closed session on the items described on this evening's direction. We did get direction from City Council, however, no reportable actions were taken. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any proclamations and presentations,
No, we don't.
and then written communications? Receive any?
There are none.
And then we'll move forward to the
We
consent.
had one email come in. Sorry, I think I am glitching. We had one email come in, but it is for the items in the consent calendar. So I will read it before we approve it.
Then we'll move on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that council wishes to pull so that we can have more in detail? I'm going to ask to pull item. I think it's. It's
Madam Chair, just want to note for the record that I am on this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. We've recorded that. So I'm going to ask for to pull item number 14 from the consent calendar. Nathan, is that you?
I was pulling up the agenda to see which item I know it's related to the personnel, which one specifically.
Economic Development Department.
Okay, and then were there specific questions on what we were doing?
There is, for me, and then so when we talk about the Economic Development Department, who do we have in the Economic Development Department?
So right now, we
Nathan, can you please turn on the microphone?
sounds like it's on from here. Can you? Okay,
I can't hear him on Zoom.
can you hear me if I talk louder?
Yes.
Okay, so right now in economic development, there isn't really anyone because we have the open director position. However, it sits under the city manager currently. So the idea with economic development is to fill it with grants, falls under economic development, business. And I know we had some discussions about business development. So this is kind of going more towards making that a little bit more of a functional department right now that doesn't have positions in it. So this is part of that shift, so to speak.
And so the grants manager then falls under you, Gabriel, correct? And then so just some understanding, there's an Economic Development Director position open. And then previously, if I recall, there wasn't a director, it was a Economic Development Manager.
Correct.
Before there was a promotion. And then during that time, did we just have the manager and then the promotion to the director without any assistance or any other personnel under that department?
Correct. Before it was just a one person show for the economic development. Next year, the goal is to increase that department, make it an independent, break it away and make it its own department. Throwing in grants, the Arts Commission, small business development. The goal is to throw a lot of special projects there, along with the first time buyer program, the weatherization program with the ARPA funds, the UBI program, the Arts Commission has indicated, and the Economic Development Subcommittee. So the goal is to grow that department. We plan to fill that director position and provide personnel to that position. I think will be about four people in total. Most of them will be current employees that we need to reclassify and throw into that position. So that's kind of the approach. Next year I'll take better. These are just items that we need to be approved in order to bring that big organizational change to the council next year.
And then so would this assistant then fall under the grants manager?
Right now it would.
And then so will we be bringing in the grants manager under the economic development department?
Yeah, we plan to, where the grants manager will report directly to the economic development director
Okay.
once that gets filled.
Okay, and then the reason I asked as well is that, so when we're talking about, when you brought the item forward, Nathan, about the different positions that we needed, in there, it did not include the economic development director, and we know that's a big budgeted item. And so I'm just wanting to understand a bit more about how staff is going to bring in a director, within the next year.
The item is budgeted, right? The director position?
It is funded, and I believe that the plan is to open that position up on next calendar year to fill that, so it can oversee the kind of the full department is the goal.
And then while it's there, we can still also freeze it. We don't have to fill it.
Correct.
And so is that the decision of city staff to continue with that position instead of holding off on it to see where we are with our finances?
I would recommend moving forward with filling that position, but the ultimate decision is up to the city council if they wish to freeze that position.
We don't have any fiscal concerns on filling that position, and I think that department not being fully filled out is probably the weakest link in our organizational structure. There are two more personnel related shifts that we are anticipating coming to the next meeting. We have to meet and confer on them, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but they are along the line. One of them is along the lines of this developing out the small business aspect of the economic development department. So it's kind of a comprehensive plan to get that in place, but we would need the director to oversee it. It wouldn't really function very well if it didn't have a director.
I agree. And I do thank staff for taking consideration the business portion of it, because we know that that's an area that really needs a lot of improvement. And so I hope that, if we're gonna make sure that we put the businesses under the economic development director, that we try to fill that position then if it's there, if it's in the budget, to be able to move forward with that. I'm a little hesitant, but if you guys are saying that the money is there, I just want to make sure that you guys are fully understanding, all these positions that are being created. And also I want to make sure that the grants manager is going to be given the assistant. And so when we discussed it, when it came before council, it was specifically to go under the grants manager because has a lot of work. So I just want to make sure that we're not pulling that position into anybody else and that it really is going for her.
And realistically, until that director position is filled, it will be directly reporting to her, it will be directly under her. It's just, we don't want to fill out a division and then try to fill out a department later, and then we have to reshuffle personnel all over again, because obviously there's some administrative part of getting that done. So functionally, it will do exactly what we were talking about, exactly what you're address your concerns directly. It's just a matter of correctly titling it so that we don't have to retitle everything again once we do fill the position and move that where it's going to go.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? No, no questions.
Madam Chair, I think as maybe a next agenda item or next meeting, I think it'd be appropriate that staff present us the full organizational chart with all the added positions, and then give us a good understanding of where we're at with respect to how many employees we have, and then what's the ultimate kind of structure that we're looking for as an organization.
And that won't be a problem at that point. We would have met and conferred on our last anticipated change, so we'll be able to accurately say where everything will fall out as far as our recommendations go. So we'll certainly be able to do that.
Thank you. And then if we can, if there aren't any more objections to the consent calendar or any other items being pulled, we can all approve the consent calendar.
I do think we have a public comment that was submitted on consent.
We do. There was an email sent in by resident Tony Perez for items number 13 through 16. And it reads like this. Hello, Mayor and council members. I'm a resident here in the city, and we would like to express our concerns with creating these new positions. Recently, the city approved new positions, and now they're requesting more. We're going into a recession, and we feel that at the moment, this position shouldn't be created because they're not needed. We would like those funds invested into getting a police department here. That's much needed here for the safety of the community. Please don't approve this position and look into how can the city better itself instead of getting into more debt? Thank you, Tony Perez.
Thank you, Angela. So if there aren't any more items to be pulled, if we can all approve the calendar by signifying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Moving on.
I do need a first and a second motion.
A motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And then can we just do the vote again, just so that we're,
I'm sorry, Angela, I couldn't hear you.
and then if we can just do the vote again so that we can be in order.
Yes, and then if we can all signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. And then now we'll be moving on to item 19 on the new business calendar.
All right, so usually this item's a little bit more of a receive and file, but there are some items that stick out on the report that I do want to kind of touch on, and then there were some commentary submitted by members of the public that I do want to address in the comments on this item. So that being said, just by way of background, the city does collect development impact fees, and they're basically they're assessed to offset the cost of future development. Obviously, development, we're looking at next 20, 30 years type of development, and we're collecting the fees now to have it in place for when police costs increase because the city's population went up. So that's the basis of what these fees are. I mean, that's what the fees are based on. They're calculated based on a Nexus study. So I want to get into a little bit about our Nexus study. So I brought it up here. Basically, this is a study that just kind of looks at how many street miles will the city need if the population increases by so much, what would be the cost of that, and then kind of looks at assessing a fee to developers to cover those anticipated costs. And that's what a Nexus study would be. Right now, the city is operating on a 2009 Nexus study for most of its development impact fees, except water and sewer, which are all the way back to 2006. So we do have so the idea here is that only facility costs associated with new development would be covered. So you'll see when we get to like the fire station, only parts that are expansionary, we would be able to fund with diff funds. The rest would not be allowed to be considered an existing deficiency, not being deficient, just that it's part of the existing needs. This is a summary of there are 10 development impact fees that the city charges any developer right now. So this is a summary of, and these are not cash balances. And yes, there are a bunch of negatives. So I want to kind of explain that a little bit. But they're not cash balances. These are fund balance. So after the liabilities are accounted for, that sort of thing, we're ending up with these negative balances. Doesn't mean that they technically have no cash in them. Okay, so just kind of hitting the highlights on a few of the larger items. The Parkland development impact fee. This one did go from a significantly negative balance of $1.3 million to $250,000 negative, largely because of the land sale, and a portion of that was attributable to this development impact fund and was funded into that. So we did see that that negative balance come up quite a bit. Library facilities fees, and this is in the notes to the report, but just so everyone's aware, that massive negative $11.8 million is because the city did do these revenue bonds back in 2016 to fund the library facilities, and those are being paid off. So essentially, once the bonds are paid off, then that would not have a negative balance. It's being funded with the fees as they come in. So that is why that one is that way. On the streets and transportation, there was essentially one major project this year that went through that development impact fee. That was $1.8 million for the Avenue 50 interchange project, and that was for right-of-way acquisition. You'll see at the end, I do need to make a small amendment to the report because this is an ongoing situation with it being an eminent domain action. But that was that project's 100% new development. Obviously, the city doesn't need an interchange if there's not going to be any development on the other side of the freeways. The general government development impact fee, just that large $4.1 million negative balance is because of funding the senior and civic center buildings through that fund. So just so that you're aware, it does stand out as a major negative number. As they're collected, the city does have in the fund balance, they have a non-spendable portion. You'll see as we go through budgets and whatnot. And that non-spendable portion goes down as more fees are collected and repay the general fund, because that was the funding source for those two buildings. This one, and this did come up in the comments, I'll talk about a little bit later, but the fire station for Fire Station 79, this project, a lot of it is rehab. However, once we separated out the project and did an analysis on it, what we're increasing in that is the ability to house more fire personnel. So we did look at, when we did this project, whether a new fire station would work or whether this was more, and based on response times, this came out to be the better option. However, this project is increasing the ability of the city to increase staffing personnel in the future. So we did look at it, basically $2.5 million of this project would be applicable to that increase in staffing capability. So a certain portion of this project is development impact fee funded. $2.5 million would be allowed. We're only budgeting $1.8 million towards this project, the rest of it being funded primarily through ARPA funds. But that is how that project broke out into a rather large project for our DIF fund. All right, so this is kind of some general comments here because the city did receive a correspondence from the Desert Valley Builders Association. We are currently in litigation with the Desert Valley Builders Association over the development impact fees. So I did want to address some of the concerns that were raised in the correspondence. It was sent to council. I know that the newer council members might not have seen it. However, these are the responses to what they're concerned, the concerns they raised. One of the concerns that was raised was in relation to the police facilities fee. We do collect a development impact fee for future police facilities. It was kind of presented as, why would we be charging a fee when they're contracted? However, that's not really an accurate portrayal of how the statute reads. In facilities, it does include public services as part of facilities, just to kind of encapsulate situations like the city of Coachella has. Obviously, if council were to develop its own police station, this would be a completely different discussion in that we would have a facility in and of itself. But either way, there's nothing to say that we shouldn't be collecting a police facilities impact fee. That was one put out there. The other one that I did want to address, and I think most of these the concerns were raised because there wasn't a full understanding of what the project scope was. There was a bus shelter fee that was collected from the 2006 Nexus study that the city had, and it hasn't been collected since 2010 when we adopted the new fees. So there was a $245,000 balance just kind of sitting there in bus shelters. We don't collect that anymore. It's not an ongoing fee. We did end up including in the budget to use the $245,000 towards the Pueblo Viejo downtown transit hub. As you can see from the project pictures, there are several covered areas where residents would wait to utilize the bus facilities, those being bus shelters. So just because the city didn't opt to put the bus shelters up and down a main thoroughfare or something like that, which was probably envisioned back when they did the Nexus study, doesn't mean that this isn't funding bus shelters. So I just wanted to get the project scope so that everybody can see why we're using those development impact fees towards this project. And as you can see, it's a very small part of the costs associated with those bus shelters. So it certainly was an allowable use of development impact fee funds. All right, so moving forward a little bit, this is going to kind of become a recurring thing. We do have quite a bit of work to do on the development impact fees at the city. The next piece to this is having the council see we're developing an RFP for, and some of that will be developing the projects that we're going to include in the study. Developing an RFP for a new Nexus study because ours was done back in 2009. So clearly there's a need to update it. We do recommend that you receive and file, but with one small edit, as I referred to earlier. If you want me to pull the report, I can, but to save time, basically on that project that we're talking about, the Avenue 50 interchange where the eminent domain was paid for, it essentially goes to a deposit while it's in litigation. And so whether we were going to call that an expenditure or we were going to call it a deposit was we were kind of discussing that at the point that we put the report together. Now that we've resolved the issue, I would recommend that council approve the report, simply changing the total project expenditures from $14,735 to include the full $1.8 million, as we're going to call it an expense at this point after those considerations. And if there are any overall questions, I can certainly address those.
Nathan, when are you going to bring the study forward for the diffs?
Been trying to do that for a couple months now. Definitely the early part of the year. It's a little bit complicated in that we could just put an RFP out right now and be like, what does somebody propose? In order for us to get it done the best way possible, we really need to develop what we want to fund. So I know there's been some projects just kind of pushed on there over the years. There was a wellness center at one point, it showed up for a couple of years and it went away. We probably need to develop our projects, the needs of the city a little bit more thoroughly before we put it out to RFP. So that's been the hang up. It's not that we haven't worked on it. It's just that I think we need to probably develop a little bit further before we put it out.
Does council have any comments, questions? So perhaps maybe doing a study session so you can get maybe some direction from council as to what developments or where the focuses should be on and priorities. Since coming on board on council, there has been a lot of questions, and I know that you and I have discussed it in detail as well. Obviously, when we have some diffs out there that we have money sitting in there, that always concerns me because you're looking at that money and we need money in other areas, and we can't, obviously it's earmarked, we can't reallocate it to other areas, but if there is a certain diff that's just accumulating funds, and at some point maybe then it should be changed into another priority instead of just accumulating funds and having it sit there, because I see like $8 million in the water connection. Do we have any ideas of maybe projects where we're going to put that funding?
Yeah, we plan to extend the water lines and sewer lines along Avenue 52 and 54, close to our sphere of influence, once we finish that process. So those are future projects that we're earmarking.
Okay.
And we actually would have spent that balance down significantly on a couple of projects that are in progress right now. However, we did issue the bonds for one that'll cover one of the wells and some of the new meter infrastructure that we would have funded out of this otherwise. So yes, there are future projects associated with it at this point.
And then I know that, public safety is always a focal point, but when looking at the police facilities impact fee, I do see it significantly lower than some of the other priorities or diffs on here. And so I really do think that we should have a study session, and then the staff can put something together so we can see where we really want to direct some of this, or where we want to get some impact fees from. And then so that we can prioritize some of the things that some of our residents have been asking for. Mayor, do you have any comments?
two things. One, I think that the study session is right on. I think that we need to really think about what type of public facilities we want. Um, there was a conversation back in the day of having a second satellite library, obviously towards the south side. Once that area gets developed, you know, you've talked about a fire station. We've talked about maybe a cultural arts facility, and then I know there's been conversations about childcare facilities. So I think it's the right time to kind of think about all this, particularly as things slow down. I think we need to just really kind of figure out what else we want to build in the city, and make sure that developers and development pay their own way. In terms of what we have right now in the books, it's important that we spend down some of that money and get some of those projects on the ground sooner than later. But ultimately, I appreciate staff's response to the letter as well as the presentation.
Thank you, Nathan. And if there aren't any questions or statements from council, can I have a motion? I'll motion the item.
I move approval, or a second.
So we have a motion to approve and then a second.
Okay, and just for the record, I didn't get it. Was it Councilmember Delgado that did the first motion?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we have a second. I'll go ahead and take roll. Councilmember Figueroa,
Aye.
Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez.
Aye.
Thank you, Angela.
Motion
And
carried.
moving on to item 21, consideration to fill 5 planning commission vacancies.
This item, obviously, congratulations to both council members, and I think we open it up. We get solicit different folks and do a 30-day solicitation, and we appoint towards January.
Thank you, Gabe.
We have a brief presentation just to get an idea of the vacancies. So I'll go through it real quick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the city council. So there are 5 vacancies on the planning commission. City council has the ability to select those planning commissioners. And so there are 5 to fill. 2 of the positions are due to Councilmember Figueroa and Councilmember Virgen now being on council. They previously were planning commissioners. And then there were other 3 expected vacancies due to terms expiring. So these are the terms in yellow, or the positions that need to be filled. So the 2 positions that are vacated by the new council members. The vacancy because Commissioner Navarrete's position has expired, so they are serving expired terms until they're filled. And then the other is Commissioner Leal, and then the alternate commissioner needs to be filled. So 2 of those positions would fill the remainder of Frank Figueroa and Stephanie Virgen's terms. So that's 2-year terms. And then the other 3 are for 4-year terms. So there's a few different options. The mayor mentioned opening it up for applications. You could immediately select planning commissioners or continue this item, provide us with direction. So that's the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Gabriel. Is there any comments or questions by council?
Just my comment would be to open up again the application process. And then also just a question for Gabe, what's the process and how are we going to advertise that there are these vacancies so that the public knows that they can apply?
I think historically, the city clerk has put an application out for a certain period of time. So if city council wants to chime in on the amount of time the application is out, when we get candidates, we will make sure they're residents of the city. And those will be presented to the city council at a future meeting.
Gabriel, I think you're wrong. Last time, what we did is they're the mayor's appointments, but what I did is give the ability for each council member to appoint their own. And so we did solicit folks that were interested to ensure that if a council member didn't have somebody that we could find somebody. But for the most part, the way we set it up is that each council member brings a member forward, and I would expect that to happen this time around as well.
I do remember that happening, but each of our nominees did put in an application. So, I mean, I have 2 council members here, but I know Dr. Frank Figueroa put in an application, and I think you did as well.
Yeah,
right, Councilman?
definitely.
So I think that I agree with the mayor, and then I think that we should open it up, but then also obviously that we each continue to have the ability to nominate someone once we see the pool of applicants. When would we be opening it up to the public?
Maybe probably.
When we get back, January 3rd, we'll start releasing the advertisements and noticings, and we can start probably, getting applicants and giving a deadline. Hopefully by February, we get those filled.
We'll put that out on social media and try to get it out there, maybe even public hearing notice.
Yeah, and I think historically, when we didn't have enough applicants, we would just extend the deadline to have others have the opportunity to apply. If there aren't any other questions from council comments,
I would just say to do a 30-day notice. And, fill it at the first February meeting.
And I'll motion to continue this item, or Carlos, what is the right action that you need here?
That would be one of the options. We also just got clear direction of what council wanted. So I think we could move on that direction to go ahead and open it up. Obviously, people can also bring their additional potential nominees, open it for 30 days. An idea of we could bring this back. Probably the first meeting in February.
Carlos, can point of clarification, can we also open it up for the Arts and Cultural Commission and Parks and Rec Commission? Or do we have to bring those items separately?
That's not on the agenda tonight, so I would probably bring that back. But that's something we could probably do administratively. I mean, to the extent we have expired terms, I think that's something administratively we could do without having to come to council.
It would be good to run all 3 of them at the same time and get as much applications as we just.
Correct. I think that's something administratively we could do, because ultimately the action would be of the city council. So we could also
Yeah.
advertise for those as well.
yeah, because it's not on the consent. You guys have the ability to then make that decision. Okay, if there's a motion to move this item forward,
A motion to move this item forward with a 30-day notice and bringing them back in the February meeting, the first February meeting.
is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Roll call, Angela?
I'll go ahead and take roll. Yes. Councilmember Figueroa,
Aye.
Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez.
Aye.
Item moves forward, and then
Motion carries.
on to agenda item 22 and approve joint construction contract agreement with DR Horton.
Hello, council members. Welcome new members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give this presentation. So this presentation is for a portion of the ST93 project, and we are seeking authorization to enter into a joint construction contract with DR Horton to complete a portion of the ST93 project. To give some background on the ST93 project, in July of 2021, City Council, that's okay, signed a reimbursement agreement with the CVAG for a total of $9,250,000. And per the agreement, CVAG covers 75% of the cost and the city will cover 25% of the cost. This project moving forward, if it does move forward with D.R. Horton, would be fully reimbursable by CVAG at the 75% level, as this is just a portion of the overall ST93 project. And in addition to the portion that we're doing, some portions are also being completed by the private developers. So on this map, you can see the Mariposa Point. That's the area that's currently under construction by D.R. Horton. And they are fully widening their frontage to 4 lanes with bike lanes, doing the enhanced medians. And that has resulted in some concern about how the traffic is going to flow in the section adjacent to the D.R. Horton project. As far as what's proposed for the ultimate improvements on ST93, there's going to be 2 eastbound continuous lanes starting east-west of Calhoun, going through the intersection. Those improvements have mostly already been completed. The ramp, the traffic signal has already been relocated. I don't know if you've driven by Avenue 15 Calhoun recently. But luckily they are doing the final pavement on Monday. Would have been nice to get some nice pictures of everything being complete, but they're doing the final improvement on the final pavement on Calhoun and the remainder of Avenue 50 on Monday. So that will be a fully improved widened section with the medians all the way out to the curb and gutter. So looking at the project now, D.R. Horton, they've been doing a great job on their work out there, very good, high quality. They have the existing the new enhanced medians in place, the landscaping in place, the curb and gutter. You can see the new asphalt to the right of this picture and the old asphalt on Avenue 50, which is very dilapidated, very cracked, and in very poor shape. So part of this overall project, we do need to replace all of this asphalt with the ST93 project. The portion you see that is in bad shape right now is the portion that will be removed and repaved on Monday and Tuesday. As the project continues in front of the vacant lot, the overall future project will include the same enhanced medians, where the medians are widened and more landscaping is added. The wide roads with the 2 lanes, the wide bike lanes, and curb gutter and sidewalk, so that Van Buren becomes a wider street as well. So this is the proposed condition in the future when we move forward with the full project. So 2 eastbound lanes going continuous throughout this whole section. However, as mentioned, the concern at this point, because the city is still moving forward with the right-of-way phase of the ST93 project, and we're still moving forward with the final designs once the right-of-way phase is complete. And in the interim, while we complete those negotiations in order to finalize the project, there is a concern that if we have 2 fully improved lanes in front of Mariposa Point and we have the additional traffic from that community, the portion in front of this vacant lot, if we leave it as it is now as 1 lane and fairly dilapidated asphalt, we'd be forcing a lot of people to merge. And we think that'd be unsafe for the vehicles, unsafe for bicycle traffic going through there. So we do want to do an interim improvement so that we can improve the safety there for our community. So right here at the vacant lot, if we did not move forward with this project, that would remain as the 1 lane with the dilapidated asphalt. Looking at how that would look right now, so this is the fully widened street. So if we did not move forward with this project, the asphalt would just dead end at the Mariposa Point. Again, people would have to merge into 1 lane. And then once they get to Van Buren, it immediately opens back up into 2 lanes. On this project, you can see the white standpipe there. That's a CVAG irrigation, an irrigation stand for the irrigation watering. That is still active because there are still farms to the south that use that. We have had discussions with CVAG about potentially abandoning that. So those are negotiations that we are still working on and design features that we're working on with CVAG. So
You mean CVWD, Andrew?
I'm sorry, CVWD. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, that is with CVWD, not CVAG. And there's existing palm trees, existing fences on the property line. So those items will be, that prevents the ability of moving forward with full construction right now, being able to move forward with curb gutter and sidewalk and the full width street improvements. So what we're looking to do with DR Horton is an interim improvement to widen the asphalt so that we have the safe passage for bicycles, safe passage for vehicles, but it's not the full street improvements. It's not the enhanced medians, it's not the curb gutter and sidewalk. We want to move forward with a project where all of the asphalt that we place right now at this time is completely within the existing right of way, so that we can continue with those negotiations with CVWD and the adjacent property owner, so that we can continue moving forward with the final design and the other hoops that we need jumped in order to complete the whole project. This is just a picture looking from Van Buren. The north side of the road is already fully improved. The curb and gutter and the lanes are already in place. And again, you can see on the south side, there's a row of palm trees, chain link fence that are on the private property. And those items are still to be negotiated in the future. So the proposed solution that we have that we've been negotiating with DR Horton is to complete about 6% of the overall ST93 project. We would like to install the second eastbound lane so that we have 2 continuous eastbound lanes across the frontage of this vacant property. You can see here, we would just do a small transition in the asphalt so we can continue 2 lanes and a shoulder for bike traffic. And that way, over the next year, as we continue our design phase, we'll be able to have the safety for the community as they travel through this section. We would be leaving the existing median in place. So when the full project comes forward after full design, that would be enhanced in the future. The existing irrigation laterals would be removed in place so that we can continue working with CVWD in order to work out how we're going to deal with those existing irrigation laterals, and the existing trees and fence line would remain in place as well. And then we would continue working with the property owner and CVWD. Seeing how this would look at the Van Buren intersection, 2 straight lanes, the turn lane stays in place. So this involves widening the street by about 10 feet. And again, all of the asphalt, all the improvements remain within the existing right of way to get this project done. Some of the advantages of this is that it's going to improve the vehicular and bicycle safety in the interim while we finish out project considerations. And another benefit is there's no loss of value to the overall project. This road needed to be ripped out anyway with the ST93 funds. All of this asphalt that we put in with DR Horton at this time will all still be great asphalt that will work with the project. We've worked with DR Horton and with KOA, our design engineers, to make sure that all the grades are set in a way that it will complement the future construction. So this isn't wasted money. It's not wasted asphalt. It'll all just be left in place and we'll work towards the other project. So overall, like I said, it's about 6% of the total project we want DR Horton to complete for us now at this time, just that over the next year, as we finish up all the other phases, we have that safety for the community. So the fiscal impact, the total cost from DR Horton, they estimated at about $511,000. If we include a 15% contingency, that gets us to $588,074. Again, that would be reimbursed through CVAG. This is already approved portions of the ST93 project and would be funded through the existing CIP budget. The anticipation is CVAG would end up covering approximately $441,000, and the portion that would be funded through the street diff is $147,000. So the recommendation from staff is that we would authorize the city manager to execute the joint construction contract with DR Horton for the total amount of $588,074 for the roadway widening between the eastern boundary of their project, Mariposa Point, and Van Buren Boulevard. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments? Mayor, do you have any comments?
Yeah, good, Andrew, good work, good job. Completely agree with you with the improvements that are being done on Avenue 50, that bottlenecking and not building out the eastern portion on the adjacent property would create some problems in the future. So I'm glad we're gonna find a solution. So good work there. Just, have you been in communications with CVAG regarding the reimbursement? And then, I just again, good job. And I think this is out of the box thinking, working with the public sector to get something done.
Well, we already have a signed reimbursement agreement with CVAG for the entire project, for the entire 9.25 million project. So there is, there's no reason why this would not be reimbursable through the existing agreements that we already have.
Okay.
We're gonna hold you to that.
With that, a motion to authorize approve the joint construction agreement with the DR in the amount of 111,000 plus 15% contingency for the roadway between Maripus Point and Van Buren Street.
And before I call for a second, the street diff, that's already been included, Nathan, right? When the, thank you. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
And then Angela, if you can take roll, please.
Yes, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez,
Aye.
Thank you.
motion carries.
Thank you, Andrew. And then now moving on to item 23, proposed modifications to Title 17 zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. So this item is to identify some of the code amendments that staff will be addressing in the planning division in 2023. And we just want to get your feedback and direction on some of these changes. So the goals of this is to modernize the municipal code, allow greater flexibility in development standards, improve the commercial center aesthetics in the city, streamline the development review process, and reduce development costs. Some of the changes we're looking at doing is finalizing the sidewalk vending ordinance. I know the city started this maybe a couple of years ago, and there is state law that requires cities to allow for sidewalk vending, but we can regulate time, place, and manner if it addresses objective health, safety, and welfare concerns. So we want to address that and make sure we can take that to City Council soon. The other is housing law updates. And so there are some bills related to accessory dwelling units. Our current ordinance is not in compliance with those standards, so we have to default to state law when someone brings an ADU proposal. The other is SB 9. So someone today could technically subdivide their property over the counter versus a tenant parcel map. And you could technically have two principal dwelling units on one residential parcel in the city. So we want to make sure our zoning ordinance addresses some of the concerns we might have with that, but still allow for what's permitted under state law. The other is parking standards. So I don't think our parking standards have been updated in a long time. And so I think we actually require a lot of parking compared to other cities. So we'll evaluate that. But the other thing I think we want to look at is even evaluate what it could mean if we eliminated minimum parking requirements. A lot of cities are actually looking at that today, and I'll go over that in a little bit. The other is updating our sign ordinance. And so our sign ordinance is a little bit antiquated. I don't think it's changed much over the last 25 years. So we want to look at that, especially we allow for 25-foot high freestanding signs on any business. So you could have a single business and you would be allowed to have a 25-foot sign. Most cities don't do that. They just allow a monument sign. The other is special event regulations. So updating that. Our entertainment permit ordinance in Title 5 is from the 1980s. So it's pretty old. So we want to make sure that we update that. Just some cities are eliminating minimum parking requirements like Anchorage, San Jose, Culver City. So a lot of cities are looking into that. We're looking at being a blue zone city. So some of that is trying to increase walking and biking, the pedestrian experience. So this would help facilitate that. The other thing for the sign ordinance is that trying to minimize the amount of freestanding signs for individual businesses will avoid this situation in the future. And so we'll take a look at that. So right now we allow like this sign that's shown on the left, a 25-foot high sign. And I think the goal would be to have 6-foot monument signs for individual businesses. So we'll bring back some recommendations for the sign ordinance. The other is for residential standards. So for residential block walls, we actually don't allow for courtyards that would allow for walls that are 6 feet in height. If you've seen that in the adjacent city in the Cove, in La Quinta, they do allow for 6-foot walls and allow for courtyards. We don't. You actually can only do a block wall that's 32 inches high. Above that has to be like wrought iron, so it allows you to see in the front yard. But we don't see a reason why we couldn't allow for courtyards. We don't allow for pools in the front yard, but if you had a courtyard, you could actually do a pool in the front yard. And that could work, especially for a smaller size lot that's 5,000 square feet. The other is for minor variances. So we do allow for minor variances, but only in certain instances. And we have to make all these variance findings. And so that's an administrative process. So we want to allow for more flexibility with those variances and actually not call it a variance, call it a minor modification. And then last is we've had a lot of instances where residents are putting up structures in the front yard setback. 20 feet is the front yard setback for single family residential zones in the city. And so we've had a lot of residents put up structures over the driveway to protect vehicles from the sun. Our standards don't allow for it. So we want to examine, if we were to allow it, what are those aesthetic concerns that we want to address, and safety, right? Because, are they well constructed? Are there concerns from the fire department about fire safety? And so this is an example of the courtyards. We don't allow for these courtyards in the city, but here's an example of what's allowed in La Quinta. So we look at how we could allow for this to occur. We communicate with the police department to see if they would have concerns. This is the kind of structure that we're starting to see pop up in the city. And so what we want to do is figure out if this is something that could be permitted and what are the aesthetic concerns that may be important to address. So last is just develop some better standards for landscape maintenance for commercial centers to make sure they're maintained in the first class condition. And last, we don't have findings for architectural review permits. And so it's important that we do that so that the Planning Commission has something to base their decisions on. That's the end of my report, but just want to get some feedback if there's anything else City Council is interested in addressing, or if we're on the right track with some of these proposed changes.
Thank you. Is there any comments from members of council?
I just have a quick question on the sign ordinance. So for example, in your slide, I know you had a picture of El Valle Automotive and you kind of showed like what it would look like with the 20-foot whatever freestanding sign. If the ordinance were to change, would these businesses that already have these signs, would they have to remove them, or are they exempt from having to do that since they did it before the ordinance changed?
Yeah, I guess they would technically be grandfathered in.
Okay,
I wouldn't be able to
perfect.
keep them.
Okay.
But if you had a business that left and it abandoned it for over a year, then we'd be able to require a new sign.
So a business that, for example, closed down and then a new owner comes in and tries to start a different business in that same location?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, but the city council could consider still allowing for that, but I think it would be a good idea to make sure that they comply with new standards.
To be more consistent. Okay, thanks, Gabe.
When it comes to this, not the residential block wall, Well, but those structures, I've seen those shade structures. Would the concern, be more, because it depends on the neighborhood, and some of them, they look nice, but I'm comparing them to like people's backyards where they have the like metal patios. So we can stay consistent with people doing like, because have you seen those metal patios as a prefab? So keeping the standard where, they have to meet certain specs, because some of them are really, really big and some of them are really small. So just making sure the specs are the same so that it's consistent. Because some people, I've seen like the one you showed, I've seen that one before, and it's really big arches, and as opposed to instead of just being level with the house. So
Yeah, if you have some feedback on what you'd like us to take a look at, and then probably when we have draft code updates, I think it'd be good to have like a study session with the council just to kind of go over those alternatives.
Any more questions or comments? Thank you for bringing this forward, Gabriel. We do have a lot of ordinances that are very dated, from the 80s. And so I'm happy to see that you've taken time to identify some of them and bring them forward. The parking standards and the sign ordinance, this is something that I had asked for when I was in the planning commission and never came back. But you're absolutely correct, and the parking standards are dated. And many cities are adopting developments that require less parking. Sometimes I don't think that we need as much of the parking that we see, especially when it came through. I remember when it came through for the cultivation. And so there was always questions there because, we had certain parking requirements, but the type of operation that they were having didn't really call for that many employees. And so there was always that question of whether what we had and what we were requiring was fair. So I'm glad that you're bringing this forward. The sign ordinance, I think that every city always has to evaluate their sign ordinance. It's constantly changing. I do appreciate the residential front yard structures. And then finally, the special events. That's something that I've been waiting on, and I'm happy that you brought it forward here. I was hoping to see something already come forward, so we're adopting something, because I know that we have some businesses, particularly one who's kind of waiting on, what the requirements are going to be so that she can follow them. So she's held back on a lot of events for fear of being shut down completely. And so we also don't want any businesses to be losing revenue. So if we can maybe prioritize that one a bit more before bringing some of the others, and only because we have some businesses that are on hold and it's costing them a lot of money. One thing that we always brought, or that we always questioned, was that, obviously like in the downtown and in other parts of the city, we don't have, the sidewalk isn't very wide. And so therefore, many of the businesses weren't able to put, tables or benches out. And I'm wondering if we can be creative so that some of those small businesses, could put something in front of their businesses. That was always a priority for them. And that's something that they've brought forward to us a lot. That was many years ago. But of having the same opportunity of putting something forward without having to, rebuild something which they don't have the money for. So I'm wondering if you can just maybe look into that as well and see if maybe they can be allowed to at least put benches or something in place. I know they don't have that much space to put a full table or a few tables, but at least if they can just put something so that the customers can sit outdoors as well. Other than that, I don't have any other comments. Mayor, do you have any comments to add?
Prioritizing, Gabe, that's a lot. And so I think as you flush this out, what do we start with, right? I definitely think that I think we need to pay a lot of attention to the conditions of our commercial centers, that are inadequate right now, and folks that are making a lot of money in the city and don't really care to invest back into their lots. I think that's something that we need to address right away. So I'm hoping that we can prioritize things, because some things they're gonna take long, So I don't know what your strategy is for that.
I think you and Renee have been working on some of the commercial developments already, not something what we asked for from the Economic Development Subcommittee. What are some of the commercial sites that we've been focusing on?
48 and also Cesar Chavez. So code enforcement's been working on that, and it's been ongoing. As far as what we're trying to do with the code, we want to strengthen those requirements a little bit more. So right now, if someone proposes a landscape plan for a commercial project, they're not really required to keep all the landscaping from that landscape plan. So it could shift over time, and they could take out plants and take out trees. But I think it's important for them to keep to that landscape plan as much as possible. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do with this.
I would make sure that we have when they get their like CUP, that we have that like we put it in the plan commission with some of those where they have that condition with the lighting agreement with the city, so that there's more kind of pieces in there for them, because there is some, I just walked when they got redone on Avenue on Cesar Chavez and next to the Food for the Shopping Center, and that looked deteriorated for years, and so now it looks really nice. So things like that make it look different, especially in a big commercial space like that. So
I think there's always the question as well, Gabriel, is the compliance part of it. And so while we're updating, some of these ordinance that we have that are back from the 80s, is, for the compliance portion of it, when we have, whether it's homes or, commercial properties that are adding things that are not really permitted, or they didn't go through the process, is how successful are we with getting those homeowners and businesses to comply? Is there a lot of challenges there?
Yeah. Sometimes, it is a challenge, right? And then, I know the council hears about these sometimes too, right? So, it is a challenge, but I think, for example, like the commercial centers, if we have a very committed program, and the city council is also committed to that, then I think we'll go pretty far this year, making sure that happens.
I think we've been a city who's been very good at being very lenient in terms of, we know the hardships that people have. And so we've been very considerate, but at some point we also have to, follow through and make sure that we're holding people accountable, or else then at that point, we see a lot of things happening that are just not permitted, from fire codes to different types of things that are really a public safety concern as well. So I'm just asking, as well as the planning department, to just prioritize some of those things that are not in compliance, and do so respectfully, but it still needs to be addressed. So that's all my comments. Thank you, Gabriel. Is there a motion to move the item forward?
I'm sorry. Are you able to put the recommendation? I'll go ahead and motion that the city council provide direction with respect to Title 17 zoning ordinance amendments proposed by staff to the Coachella Municipal Code in 2023.
Is there a second?
second.
Angela, can you take roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Figueroa,
Aye.
Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez.
Looks like he dropped off.
Oh, I think he did drop off.
Okay.
Okay, well, this one will be a vote without him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now moving on to public hearing item 24, resolution number 2022-89, a resolution necessity of the acquisition of fee.
Correct. And then with us today is Holland Stewart, attorney with our firm, who is gonna be presenting the item and will be the individual handling this matter for the city of Coachella.
Thank you.
Holland?
It's great to meet you all. Thank you for having me. Do we know if the mayor will be back on?
Mayor, can you confirm you're on the Zoom call?
He's not on the Zoom call right now. I can check.
Yeah, because for this item to
Uh.
necessity, we need 4 affirmative votes to move forward. And that's the reason we would need to ensure the mayor's on.
I'm still happy to give the presentation. I'll work with Dr. Martin to do it, but if we don't have 4.
Correct.
I'll need to come see you again.
Let me try.
Yeah, text him and see if he can jump
I
back
can
on.
wait. If you'd like to take another item, we can wait to see if he comes back. Okay. What would you like to do?
So he's back on.
Okay, mayor
a
is
minute.
back in.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Terrific. So this is a resolution of necessity to initiate, or wait, to authorize legal counsel and staff to initiate condemnation proceedings for about a 5-acre parcel here in the city of Coachella. We should make the finding as a city that notice was properly given to the property owner. And I can tell you that it was. My staff sent them the notice of this hearing on November 11th. It does not appear that they're with us today. Okay. So what the city will need to do in this hearing, we will need to make 4 findings as outlined in the staff report. And once it does that, it may move on the resolution. Dr. Martin, would you like to take it from here? Or do you want me to keep going? I'll keep going. Okay. So the 4 findings as outlined in the staff report are that the public interest and necessity require this proposed project, the Central Park project, that the project is planned or located in a manner that will be the most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. The real property to be acquired is necessary for this project, and that an offer for just compensation has been made. We don't have to go line by line. You should all consider the staff report and your conversation with staff as you sort of make these findings. I'm available to answer any questions about the process. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and vote.
And just to add that this is for Central Park, the park that we got for the grant, the $8.5 million grant. We picked the site because the property owner was a willing seller. And during our negotiation process, they backed away. So that's why we're moving forward with them in the domain process.
And if there are no questions from the council, we can go ahead and open the public.
I have a few questions, and is it the case that we're not having success in negotiation with the property owner right now? And that's why we're proceeding here.
That's correct. And then also do note that even if council adopts the action today, we will still continue to voluntarily purchase the property. That's always the end goal, to voluntarily purchase.
And is it the case that if the property owner does not voluntarily agree, then we would be using dollars out of our general fund to procure this, and it's not reimbursable by the grant?
That's my understanding, correct? Because the way the grant is written, the grant funding cannot be used for eminent domain purposes. So it would have to come out of the city's general fund, correct?
Let me just say that I walked that whole neighborhood recently. I did a lot of work there, and in talking to a lot of the neighbors, that they really don't like that site simply because of the fact that they feel that the area that's north of the project that's by the school is more appropriate because it will help to reduce the dust. And this project really doesn't do any of that. And it's also, there's not a huge net benefit, and if we're going to go down this route, which I was told we weren't going to go down this route, we were doing this only as a means to negotiate, then I think we need to go after a site that's really going to meet our needs and be able to provide some catalytic growth and change there. I'm not sure that this is the right direction for us.
Mayor, thank you for your comments. I think I would just say that adopting this resolution does not mean that we are going to sue them tomorrow in order to try to require this property. A lot of times our public agencies will use the resolution of necessity to basically show that they're serious with the property owner and say, look, we could. We mean what we say when we say that we want this property, we want to pay you the just compensation for it. It's my understanding that the property owner has not been unwilling to sell at the price and certain conditions that he's asked for. I think that if he were really opposed to selling, he probably would be here tonight. He's probably, I guess we can infer that he's fine with us entering into this sort of resolution stage. He would just like more money, which is a very comfortable place for our firm to be. We do this stuff every day. We know how to negotiate with folks and make sure that they are paid fairly, and also that our agencies don't spin their wheels. I think it's also important just to think about timing of projects, right? Like certain agencies need to get things done for right-of-way certs, for funding, for grants, what have you. I think that if the council decides that they need it now, then you can certainly go ahead and adopt this resolution and we can move forward. If the council decides that we don't really need it now for whatever reason, and Dr. Moreno, maybe you'd be best to talk with this than me, but some of it is just timing. So we can make that call as a city and you guys as an elected body.
Staff would recommend moving forward with this item. That, just as the attorney indicated, it's a timing issue, right? If we go back to the drawing board or engage a new landowner, they might not be willing. We already talked to that landowner. He's not willing to sell. So if we would take his property, it would be through eminent domain as well. He was part of the first grant selection when we did the first round of grants, and he did not want to be a willing seller. So we picked this site. They were a willing seller until we negotiated with them. So staff would like to move forward just for the timing of this grant. We want to get this project designed and built within the next 2 years. And if we go back to the drawing board, we would have to start all over again, getting new appraisals and possibly eminent domaining other property owners that would be in the same situation we're at now.
Is there any comments, questions from council? So that is correct. I think one of the things that we obviously wanted to make sure that we were looking into was different properties. There were some owners who just weren't interested at all into selling their property to us. And then there were other properties that just didn't fall within the area to meet the requirements to be afforded or to get approved for the grant. And then at the time, this landowner did submit a letter that he was interested or willing to sell the property. And then you're absolutely correct. There's just a matter of more money. And that's also understandable for any landowner to want more money. I would probably do the same thing. So that's a concern. If we're looking into another property, then we have to start the process all over again. We have to get community input because that's a requirement. And so for this particular site, there was community meetings held and the residents took time to create the park, which was also a requirement. So if we're going to look at another site, we do have to look at time. We have to just look at whether that landowner wants to sell their property. And if they don't, then we have to go through the whole process of eminent domain again. But then we have to open it up to the public as well, and then have them redesign that park, especially if that parcel is a different shape or size. And so because of all those factors and the timeline that we're in, for me, I think this would be one of the better options is to just move forward. hopefully it doesn't result in eminent domain. But if staff thinks that you can find another property site and go through the public, meetings and go through all that process within the deadline that the grant is asking for, well, then I'm open to that. But we just haven't seen it yet. And so those are the challenges that we're facing. So
Yeah, very quickly. I will say that we have at least about a 6-month window to continue negotiations. I think we've been very, very eager to speak to the property owner and to work with him. So it certainly is not, if you act today in adopting this resolution and making these findings, it's not going to be the end of our negotiations. We will continue. So.
And just to be clear, where I stand, because I'm going to vote no on this, and the motion will fail because you need 4 votes. My concern is that the use of eminent domain, if we're going to do it, then we need to get a site that is ideal and that's going to be one that allows us to build off of it. I understand this original site came because the owner was willing to negotiate with us, and that's great. But then he reneged, and he does not want to negotiate with us, so we need to use eminent domain. So that's my point. If we're going to use eminent domain as a means to acquire land, then let's do it. Let's do so in a site that will actually be more advantageous. The idea that we have to do full community hearing and restart this project, I don't think is accurate. I think in talking to the state has said, hey, go find a site. You've already done the hearings. Moreover, when it comes to the actual engineering of this project, we haven't even started the documents. So none of the engineering plans have been done. None of that has been done. And so for me, I think right now, we can open up the public hearing, do what we need to do, but I'm going to be a no on this.
Keep in mind that we have been trying to find other properties, but we haven't found anything within our budget, any willing seller, any properties that meet that requirement. So more likely, if we do go down this route, we will have to eminent domain some properties, and it'll be a higher cost, right? Right now, we're looking at maybe a $500,000 hit to the general fund with eminent domain and legal costs. If we go for another site due to the increased value of land, it'll be probably in the millions. So that's one thing to consider. This is the most affordable, direct, quickest route to go.
Mr. City Manager, how can you say that if you haven't assessed any other properties?
We have, Mr. Mayor, we reached out to many realtors and they haven't been able to find property for us. We've been looking with 3 of the major realtors in the area. They haven't been successfully able to find anything for us. They found some property in the industrial zone, which wouldn't be a good place for a park. But right now, there's no, people still think their property is worth 190, 180,000 an acre, and we can't pay for that right now with this grant. Our land acquisition for this property, for this grant is about 600,000. So that regardless of we're going to be out of pocket.
And since this is a public hearing, this would be a good time right now to open the public hearing, see if we have any comments.
Open up the public hearing at 7:20.
Not sure if we have any
Andrea,
members of
do
the
we have
public.
any written responses or
Greg,
submissions?
Do we have any comments on this, or do we have anybody on Zoom as well willing here to speak on this item?
We do not have any written comments. I can check to see if there's anyone on Zoom that is raising their hand to speak. I don't see. There's no one on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Angela.
Okay, and if we don't have anybody here in the audience to speak on this item, we can close the public hearing.
And I'll close the public hearing at
We close
7:21.
the-
So when is the deadline to submit the acquisition for land for the grant?
I can get that information, Selena. I don't know if Selena has that answer. Selena, do you have that information?
Yes, I do, Mr. City Manager. Actually, we need to start drawing down funds probably around January, February. So staff was going to conduct an RFP for design services because we need to have at least a portion of the acquisition completed no later than May of of 2023. So we have a very tight deadline, and I just wanted to iterate that.
And based on that information, any other route would, we would not meet that deadline. If we stick to this resolution, move forward with the site, we will meet that deadline.
My fear is that if we don't move forward with the resolution and that we look at other properties, that we're gonna miss the deadline. And then, you know, there goes the, what is it, $8.5
Yes.
million that, you know, we had available to us. What I'm proposing is that we move forward with the resolution. If there are other properties that we can seek out, then let's seek them out. But I don't want to, you know, kind of close up this option or opportunity. There's no reason why we can't move forward with the resolution. And then if, you know, if the mayor wants, you know, you to look at other properties and continue because you've been looking at other properties, they're just too high. And then we would have to go into the eminent domain route more than likely. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can move forward with this resolution while still looking at other properties, if that, you know, meets the needs of the grant.
And we will definitely keep looking. We're always looking. We're looking for new future park sites. I'm working with a development service director, Gabriel Perez, and we are looking at other sites, but we want to keep this process going so we don't meet that deadline. And if something else falls in between, then we will be happy to bring that to council.
Mayor, is that something that you're open to? Is moving forward with this resolution while still looking at other properties?
I'm very pessimistic, but I understand what needs to be done, and I still don't believe that we'll miss the deadlines. I know the state has been working with us and has indicated that they would adjust the timelines. So, you know, I feel like I'm hearing a couple of different things, but it is what it is.
Okay.
Well, I think if you want to just call for the motion, go ahead and we'll see how it lands.
Is there a motion to move the item forward?
Before we motion, sorry, I'm confused now at this point because now I'm hearing different things kind of being brought up. But so if we don't move forward by January or February, would we miss out on the grant? Do we lose the grant at that point?
So you know what are the repercussions if we don't meet the May deadline?
Okay, so let me go ahead and just provide a little background. So Mr. City Manager actually did present in closed session, I believe, or maybe a study session to council regarding the city's efforts, bona fide efforts to try to identify other properties, talk to different property owners, things like that. And obviously we were not successful. We just could not find another site despite Mr. City Manager commissioning realtors and everybody that possibly could assist with this. So if we were to set the clock back, we would not meet the timeline because we would have to restart the process of identifying a site, negotiating. And as Mr. City Manager indicated, a lot of the sites that are available are over the grant amount of 600 and something thousand, right? So they're in the millions or close to $1 million. And so after, because we definitely vetted this process, we looked at so many sites, so many different possibilities, and including in the previous rounds with the park rounds, excuse me, we had also done a very community-oriented engagement process where people identified sites. And again, we were met with similar challenges and obstacles. And so in the end, this was the site because we did have a willing seller and then he changed his mind. And so here we are, but we will miss the timeline because they've already extended. We were actually supposed to be closer to somewhere. Actually, our timeline was October of this year. So to get, so this is for real. The timeline is May of 2023. And so as the attorneys have indicated, It will take us 4 to 6 months to complete the eminent domain process. And so the state, I think, is willing to work with us if we're a little over the timeline, but to start the process all over, that would set us back at least 2 to 3 months. And then we lose, risk losing the grant.
And thank you, Ms. Menace. I will offer some clarification. So if the council were to adopt this resolution tonight and we move forward, maybe in the next couple of weeks, we have all the documents we file, and we'd file your complaint in eminent domain if the council wishes to do so with what's called the motion for prejudgment possession. There are some statutory timelines for notice and then when this motion may be heard. So that's where the 4 to 6 months comes from, is that we estimate, our best estimate is that we can get you what's called prejudged possession within 4 to 6 months. And that gives you all the incidents, all of the benefits of ownership, just without the legal title. So you can construct on it, you can use it for funding, certification, all that kind of stuff. So the eminent domain process may not be resolved by then. And frankly, if we can just stipulate with the property owner for prejudgment possession, we can get it in a matter of days, potentially, right? But if he fights us on it, well, then we may have to go forward, or we just have to go and go to the hearing. All that to say is, I would estimate 4 to 6 months from the filing of the complaint and service with that motion for us to get you prejudgment possession, which you can use for all of your stuff. But pushing this hearing back, or looking for alternative sites.
And
But,
as we do.
I'll motion to approve this item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Can I have roll?
Yes, Councilmember Figueroa,
Aye.
Angela?
oh, I'm sorry, maybe I have a lag. Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
thank you. Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
Mayor Hernandez,
Yes.
Thank you.
motion carries.
Now we're moving on to successor agency item number 25.
Go to the PowerPoints. Okay, so the successor agency to the Coachella Redevelopment Agency, the redevelopment agencies went out in 2013 by function of law. However, lingering items such as bonded debt that was outstanding if they own properties and some other situations would linger for multiple years. So the city of Coachella has bond debt outstanding in the former successor agency that's currently on the city's books through the successor agency fund. Each year we prepare a schedule that basically shows the total expenses needed to cover the debt, and then plus whatever administrative aspects of getting the debt paid are involved. And we're still talking about like financial statement reporting, et cetera. So that is what this is. So it's required that the ROPS be adopted and the administrative budget to go with that. Then once that's adopted, the property taxes are allocated from the former redevelopment areas to cover just those debts, and then the rest of the property taxes that would have previously gone goes back into the local agencies as passed through taxes. The Coachella has 3 bond issues outstanding right now. The total needs to cover these costs, and they're specific as to what they are, is $5.7 million. And we're talking about the administrative costs. We're talking about literally like finance staff's time to print checks, do financial reports. It's also covered for audit costs, and then literally the time that's being spent here by the city council to hold a meeting in regard to that. So these are the administrative items. The administrative budget, the proposed administrative budget is $77,000 this year, which is significantly lower than usual, and I'll go into a little bit on that. In the past, it's kind of been evolving over time as far as what the allowed costs are. We did receive, and they're always looking at costs 2 years in advance is when the county reviews them and the state reviews them, the Department of Finance. So we had discussions from the county that they were looking at how much we were charging as far as administrative budget, because previously we had $250,000 for several years, and we've been ratcheting it down in our budgets for the city's budgets over the past couple of years. And we did also receive written notice from the Department of Finance. They said they weren't going to take action, but they did say that they found that it was likely to be excessive. So I did want to include that in the discussion points here, because the administrative budget is significantly less than it has been in the past. So just so that council's aware of why that is what it is. One of the mechanisms that was one of those things that was put into the law that was supposed to happen would be that the agencies file a last and final ROPS. So what would essentially happen is you then, instead of filing a ROPS for 23-24, you'd file it for, in this case, we'd file it for 24 through 2033, the last date of the last bond issuance. So there was that mechanism, and I was previously at an agency that we did file a last and final because LA is in LA County and they required that we file it. Riverside County has not required that we file it, but staff is looking to do the last and final ROPS coming up in the next year. So at that point, we simply just wouldn't have to adopt this schedule each year, but council will need to adopt the last and final ROPS going through to the end of the successor agency's existence. We do recommend that you adopt the proposed ROPS and the administrative budget. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Are there any comments or questions by members of council?
No.
Mayor, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. And so is there a motion? We do a motion in a second, right?
It's a public hearing. I don't want to jump to open it.
Is it a public hearing item? No. This is
No, not up for this item.
Okay.
No.
We need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll take roll. Councilmember Figueroa,
Aye.
Councilmember Delgado,
Yes.
Councilmember Virgen,
Aye.
and Mayor Hernandez, I believe he dropped out again.
Thank you, Angela.
But you're welcome, but motion carries with these 3 votes.
Is there any public comments?
We do not, I don't have any written public comments. If there is anyone in chambers, we can go ahead and take those comments. And I don't see anyone raising their hands on Zoom to speak.
Okay, thank you. We don't have anybody in attendance either. Moving on to reports and requests. Council comments.
I can go first. Attended today the Senior Center Volunteer of the Year Award, where Gabriel Hernandez was awarded the Volunteer of the Year Award. It was a great event. It was holiday themed. The room was full of joy and excitement with all the seniors, and it was really great to see everybody there. I attended with Gabriel Martin, the city manager. That was it, and took a tour of the facilities today as well. So
Thank you. Councilmember.
Just a request. I don't know how often we get updated, but whatever we're doing right now with LAFCO, if we can continue to get updates. I know that in the planning commission meetings, Gabe used to give us some updates as to what the city was doing. So if we could just get a couple of updates at the next meeting, that'd be great.
I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Mayor Hernandez has dropped off. I do want to give the acknowledgement and thank you to the Public Works Director and her team. for always putting fantastic tree lighting and parade. I know that we still have some challenges as far as reducing the time of the parade. I think we're still at about 4 hours. And I know that brings a lot of challenges and headaches for staff, trying to figure out how to reduce it. So I'm gonna ask if council's willing to support it, is that we bring back to see, what occurred for the parade and see where we can try to reduce. But this time, if we can have B. Gonzalez also present, so that perhaps maybe she can give us some insight about where we can reduce. Because I think where a lot of that time is happening is where a lot of the performances are happening in front of the judges, and that's taking a really long time. So if we can have that brought back, Gabriel. And then lastly, I wanted to give a congratulations to Councilmember Frank Figueroa and Councilmember Stephanie Virgen on their wins. And then also the re-election of Mayor Hernandez. I do want to take a moment to thank, all the unions that represent a variety of professions and skilled labor, public safety unions, civil servants, organizations committed to families, education, healthcare, and females in office, CV Democratic clubs, elected officials throughout the Coachella Valley and Riverside County for your endorsements to represent you. We ran a really good campaign. I'm very proud of the campaign that we ran. We knocked on over 3,000 doors. We made over 20,000 phone calls, which is a lot for any campaign to accomplish. So I'm very, very proud of that. And I look forward to serving everybody for the remainder of my 4-year term till 2024. And I hope that, Mayor Hernandez and I can continue to work together for the remainder of my 2 years of my term, and as well as his 2 years of re-election. Lastly, I did want to just acknowledge my nephew who passed away. He was an all-star basketball player for Indio High School, for the Rajas. He made the newspaper quite a bit. And so in his honor, I just want to read a paragraph or two from one of the, from Patty Myers. I can't make out the time because it's too faded for me to see it. But it says, Indio High School basketball coach Jim Goetz predicted early this season that star senior Matt Preciado could challenge for Desert Valley League with his all-around game. The sharp shooting forward, the lone player remaining from the Rajas 2002-03 DVL title team, led the way with 18 points Tuesday night. And this is a quote from the coach. When we started the season, when I thought about the team and what we needed to do, I had to get the ball into his hands. The first year head coach following the second round of the Cathedral City Indio Winter Classic, Matt can post up, shoot off the dribble. He's a jump shooter and he can drive strong. He's a great defender. And when you take into account his overall game, he's as good as anyone in our league. We try to play to his strengths. And as usual, we all try to play to his strengths. He was an amazing human being, a hard worker, a wonderful dad. And so I just want to end this meeting in his honor to the star basketball player. And then Gabriel, if you have any comments.
Actually, Councilmember Delgado, I wasn't aware that that was your nephew, but I'm sentimental because I think that on behalf of the Rajas, I am an alumni and he's actually in my class. So of course I knew Matt, everyone knew him. Great guy. So on behalf of the Rajas, we give the respects because a lot of our friends are really saddened about what happened. So my condolences.
Thank you, Angela, for your kind words, my family, and I greatly appreciate it.
Our condolences, Councilmember Delgado. During this difficult time, we want to send you our prayers and thoughts. And if you need anything, we're here for you.
Thank you.
I would like to congratulate Councilmembers Virgen and Dr. Figueroa on their elections. Had the pleasure of meeting with you, talking to you this week. Look forward to your direction and leadership in the coming years. So welcome. I would like to congratulate and thank my staff for their hard work throughout this year. They've been amazing, supportive, working hard, going beyond the call of duty. So I'm real grateful for them and want to wish them Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. Also want to congratulate Councilmember Galarza for graduating with his master's in public administration, a true inspiration and role model for future Chicano Latinos in the city. That being said, I wish everybody a happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all the residents of Coachella. Feliz Navidad y que tengan un año bueno. And that's my conclusion.
Thank you. And meeting adjourns at 7:42. Thank you.